What if I told you hell just lost its grip on your destiny, and there's absolutely nothing it can do to stop what heaven has already released? This is not a drill. This is not a maybe. This is your divine takeover in motion, and it already started while they were still doubting you. You're not waiting for a win. You're walking through the gates of a season that was prophesied, fought for, and now activated. But here's the plot twist. If you sleep on what's about to unfold tomorrow, this entire shift could bypass your awareness, and you'd be standing in victory, still thinking you're in warfare. This isn't preparation anymore. It's execution. You've already entered the sacred beginning of your unstoppable winning season, and heaven is backing every step. Drop a blazing 777 in the comments if you know this is your prophetic confirmation. And to every faithful soul who's ever hit that super thanks, I honor you. You are helping trumpet this word across timelines, nations, and destinies. Now lean in, because what I'm about to release next will make it undeniable. You've been marked by heaven, and this is your season of divine revenge and unstoppable rise. God's chosen ones. Your winning season has begun, and here's why no one can stop it. For what felt like eternity, you questioned the delays. You assumed your pause meant punishment. You interpreted heaven's silence as rejection, and the hiddenness as disqualification. But what if it was none of that? What if the stillness wasn't a denial but a divine synchronization? God wasn't ignoring you. He was aligning everything around you to recognize the magnitude of what He placed within you. Heaven wasn't late. It was calculating the exact moment the world would no longer be able to deny your anointing. What if the perceived delay was actually a divine shield? David felt that, anointed but not yet appointed. He wandered between pastures and caves, writing psalms while hiding from Saul's spears. Psalm 31, 15 declares, "My times are in your hands, and so are yours." You weren't waiting in vain. You were being synchronized with heaven's timeline. But now, something has shifted, not just in the natural, but in the supernatural grid surrounding you. Can you feel it? The resistance you used to battle has thinned. The heaviness no longer clings. Even your enemies can sense it. They just can't name it. It's because you've stepped into the early current of your winning season, not the preparation for it, the initiation of it. Have you noticed how people are suddenly quiet around you? How strange doors start opening without your knocking? These aren't coincidences, they're confirmations. But if your heart has been crying out for an unmistakable signal, something that shatters doubt once and for all, that's what tomorrow holds. Tomorrow is not just another square on the calendar. It's a divine timestamp, a signal flare from heaven, a day when evidence starts surfacing in the most unusual places. And here's the twist: when these signs begin to manifest, they won't look like miracles to the untrained eye. They'll look unfair, unjustified, out of order. But is that not how God often operates with His chosen? Joseph's rise to power in Egypt made no logical sense. Genesis 41:14 says, "Then Pharaoh sent and called Joseph, and they brought him quickly out of the dungeon." No ladder, no promotion track, just supernatural placement. Can your spirit grasp that you're next in that pattern? You won't climb traditional ladders. You'll leap over them. And when it happens, they'll call it luck. They'll say it was random. But it wasn't random. It was prophetic. It was reserved. And what they don't realize is that heaven doesn't honor systems. It disrupts them. Jesus bypassed earthly protocol. In John 7:15, The crowds marveled, saying, "How does this man have such learning, having never been taught?" But chosen ones don't follow standard scripts. They follow divine scrolls. Look at entrepreneur and artist S. Devlin, the visionary stage designer behind Kanye West's opera and Beyoncé's iconic visuals. She once said, "The invisible structure is more important than the visible." And that's what your life has been, a hidden structure built in silence. Now, ready for spectacle. You are about to step into rooms you didn't network your way into because God was your sponsor. But what happens when your rise challenges someone else's illusion of control? The little-known story of Karl Theodor zu Guttenberg, once Germany's rising political star, groomed for greatness. Praised across Europe until it was revealed he plagiarized his entire doctoral thesis. The fall was swift. Why? Because you can't build lasting elevation on stolen essence. His entire ascent collapsed under the weight of false credibility, a reminder that what's fabricated will eventually fracture, but what's anointed is eternal. And yet the question remains, how will you navigate the envy, disbelief, the accusation that you didn't earn it? When God moves you from wilderness to spotlight, it often looks like a glitch in the system. But Deuteronomy 28:13 reminds us, "And the Lord will make you the head and not the tail." The headship God gives doesn't need human approval. It just needs your agreement. This season will not be quiet. It will not be gradual, and it will not be explainable. It will be accelerated, undeniable, and uncharted. The frequency of your life has changed. The pattern has been rewritten. Have you ever seen a hummingbird fly? Its wings beat up to 80 times per second, so fast the human eye can barely track them. And yet, in that blur, it hovers with perfect stillness. That's what your breakthrough will look like. Rapid movement, divine stillness, heaven's choreography in real time. The season has begun. Chosen one, and this time, there are no more rehearsals, no more hiding behind humility that borders on fear, no more waiting for validation from the very ones who doubted your assignment. Stand up, show up, rise, not because you're ready, but because heaven said, "Go." They'll whisper that you didn't earn it, that you skipped the line. That door's opened for you without a visible key. But what they'll never grasp is that the system didn't malfunction, it bent to God's will. The rules didn't break by accident. They collapsed because heaven wrote a new equation where you are the anomaly. When divine favor moves, natural laws don't apply. They yield, they bow, they adapt. This isn't payback, it's prophetic alignment. You're now being handed opportunities that make no logical sense to those who have made struggle at their altar. To them, visibility is the proof of value. But for you, it was the silent shaping that unlocked the gates. The long nights no one clapped for, the decisions no one understood, the obedience that cost you connections. What you're walking into is not compensation, it's confirmation. Psalm 23:5 says, "You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies." That wasn't just about food, it was about spiritual honor. You were seated in obscurity while heaven was preparing public access. And now, the table is set. But not everyone will be able to handle the guest list. You won't just shine, you'll be separated, not by pride, but by spiritual altitude. Have you ever wondered why eagles don't fly in flocks? Because not everyone can breathe at the altitude they're designed for. And now that you've ascended, even your silence carries a frequency that confuses low-flying spirits. You're not glowing up, you're rising out, not to impress, but to preserve the purity of your call. This isn't the kind of success that demands applause. It's the kind that demands adjustment. You are no longer vibrating on the same level as the noise. You've become unreachable to what once had easy access. And as this transformation unfolds, you'll notice that emotional distance will grow, not because you're cold, but because heaven is insulating you. Isaiah 60:15 prophesied, "Although you have been forsaken and hated, with no one traveling through, I will make you the everlasting pride and the joy of all generations." What if this entire shift is less about promotion and more about preservation? In the Danish Christian film Odette, 1955, there's a moment where the protagonist, presumed mad for his unwavering faith, suddenly speaks a word of resurrection, and it works. No theatrics, no explanation, just faith doing what logic cannot. The crowd stares in silence, unable to explain it. That's what's about to happen to you. The power moving through you won't be noisy, but it will be unshakable. And yet the question lingers: how will you protect this new dimension? When you begin to embody answers others haven't even formed questions for, will you still be willing to walk unseen, unvalidated, uninterrupted? Romans 8:19 tells us, "For the creation waits in eager expectation for the children of God to be revealed." This is not about being seen, it's about being revealed. And revelation doesn't arrive with a press release, it arrives with presence. Imagine the pufferfish, a small, underestimated creature, under threat. It expands silently and rapidly into a form so large, it shocks its predators into paralysis. It doesn't fight, it expands. And you're not fighting back anymore. You're expanding into what they never saw coming. You are no longer operating on the same level where confusion and chaos once found you. Your rise is sacred. Your silence is power. Your presence is a prophecy. Don't explain it. Don't dilute it. Rise fully into it. This isn't a spotlight. It's a summons. There will come a moment when things no longer resonate, not because you've changed emotionally, but because you've evolved spiritually. The conversations that once lit your fire now flicker out before they finish. The places that once fit you now feel architecturally too small, as if your soul has expanded beyond the dimensions of your former space. This is not arrogance. It's not aloofness. It's ascension, spiritually. You've outgrown the resonant frequency of the atmosphere you once called normal. According to quantum acoustics, every material has a unique frequency at which it vibrates most powerfully, but when stretched or elevated beyond that threshold, it begins to produce a new sound. That's what's happening to you. The frequency you once vibrated in agreement with is no longer compatible with the sacred retuning taking place inside you. Is it possible that what you're interpreting as disconnection is actually divine distinction? When you walk into a room and feel the disconnect, don't rush to reattach. When words from familiar mouths no longer land, don't rush to decode them. This isn't dysfunction, it's redirection. God is elevating your internal signal so precisely that only those with the matching bandwidth can find you. John 10:27 says, "My sheep hear my voice, and I know them, and they follow me." And when your voice is being refined, your audience will shift dramatically. You're not experiencing loneliness, you're being moved out of energetic traffic and into a spiritual vacuum where interference can't track you. In space science, vacuums aren't empty. They're intensely full of unseen force. This is your space now. It's not silence. It's insulation. And what's most unexpected is how your very presence starts changing the temperature of environments without speaking, without performing. You'll notice people pausing, questioning, even trembling, not out of fear, but out of unprocessed recognition. Their subconscious knows heaven has touched you, even if their intellect can't name it. Isaiah 36:6 says promises. Whether you turn to the right or to the left, your ears will hear a voice behind you, saying, "This is the way, walk in it." That voice isn't external anymore. It's internal. You're no longer being guided by outer agreement, you're being led by inner revelation. This is the turning point where external validation fades and internal divine navigation takes over. Think of how submarines operate when evading sonar detection. They shift to a stealth mode called silent running, reducing internal noise to avoid being tracked by enemy frequencies. That's you now, not hiding, just operating below the radar of spiritual interference. The most surprising effect, you'll feel more energized than ever, not from noise, but from flow. Psalm 46:5 says, "God is within her. She will not fall. God will help her at break of day." Does that help? It's coming from the sustaining flow of heaven, not the draining cycles of people who can't feel your new wavelength. And in the background of your ascent, you'll begin to notice how those who once read you clearly can no longer interpret your silence. They can't track you, because you're no longer broadcasting on the same bandwidth. You've exited their range. Spiritually speaking, your signal is now encrypted. And here's the question most never ask. What happens when heaven cloaks your frequency not to hide you, but to protect what's unfolding? This level of energetic encryption is what allows divine leaders to maintain stamina. It's not a popular game anymore. It's a frequency conservation strategy. You're not just being elevated to be seen. You're being elevated to operate beyond distortion. Legendary architect Zaha Hadid, the first woman to win the Pritzker Architecture Prize, once said, "There are 360 degrees, so why stick to one?" She redefined space by breaking linearity. You, too, are no longer confined to straight lines or standard timelines. You're building in sacred curves, angles only heaven can calculate. This is no longer a season of trying to make sense. This is a season of being made sacred. You are not here to be predictable. You are not here to be easily found. You are here to rise, encrypted, elevated, aligned. Step fully into that sacred altitude and never apologize for being untouchable by noise. Heaven isn't hiding you anymore. It's securing you. Something even more surreal is not just approaching, it's already unfurling beneath your feet. You're not glimpsing the future anymore. You are standing in it. And the signs of that truth will start surfacing in the most unexpected way. Conversations around you will begin echoing thoughts you had years ago. People who once dismissed your warnings, overlooked your ideas, or laughed at your instincts, they'll suddenly start repeating the very patterns you discerned long before they became visible. Have you begun to notice it yet? The eerie familiarity in their sudden epiphanies, the déjà vu of topics that once got you silence or side eyes, now becoming the center of group discussion. This isn't an annoyance. It's confirmation. Isaiah 42:9 says, "Behold, the former things have come to pass, and new things I now declare before they spring forth. I tell you of them." That's what was happening in you all along, divine foresight wrapped in obedience. You weren't off. You were early. At first, it may feel frustrating, like the world is waking up to a conversation you already left years ago. But don't let the frustration become bitterness. Because this is not just about being right, it's about being affirmed in heaven's timing. What if the reason you felt misunderstood for so long wasn't because you were wrong, but because you were prophetically premature? In Luke 2:19, Mary treasured and pondered the mysteries surrounding Jesus' birth quietly in her heart. She didn't argue. She didn't post. She carried the truth until the world was ready to receive it. You've done the same. And now, as others begin to echo your language, repeat your dreams, and recognize what you carried in secret, you are witnessing not plagiarism, but prophetic proof. This is what walking in your winning season really looks like. Realizing the world is finally catching up to your past self. The version of you that had those bold thoughts, the sacred instincts, and those divine downloads when no one else could see the blueprint. The loneliness wasn't your fault. It was your frequency. Branding legend and entrepreneur Bozoma St. John, known for her groundbreaking leadership at Netflix and Apple, once said, "Sometimes the world doesn't catch up to your brilliance until it's tripping over your footprints." You weren't ahead of your time by mistake. You were walking in sync with eternity's rhythm. But for every divine confirmation comes a mirror, and that mirror will also reflect those who mocked what you carried. One such example is Martin Shkreli, a former pharmaceutical executive who skyrocketed to infamy after price-gouging life-saving drugs and belittling public outrage. Once heralded as a financial prodigy, his arrogance blinded him to the ethical collapse he was engineering. Eventually, federal fraud charges caught up with him. His consequence, prison time and total reputational devastation. It was a sobering reminder that mocking what serves others leads to public humiliation. So the question becomes, how will you walk now that the world is catching up to your shadows? Will you feel slighted or silently vindicated? Romans 8:18 says, "The sufferings of this present time are not worth comparing with the glory that is to be revealed in us." That glory is not the future, it's now. But it was hidden for a reason. Because what is holy must first be protected before it is revealed. Psalm 126, 5 declares, "Those who sow in tears shall reap in joy." You sowed in silence, you reaped in ridicule, but now you will harvest in honor, not because you shouted, but because you stayed. You never needed to defend what heaven downloaded. You just needed to keep walking, and now the world is walking behind you. This is not your season of being seen, it's your season of being proven. You were misunderstood because you were ahead. Now, you're rising because you outlasted the silence. The world is catching up to your obedience. Rise boldly, walk confidently, and don't wait for applause. You already outran their echo. This is why you've often felt out of place, not because you didn't belong, but because your vision was calibrated to a time and place that hadn't arrived yet. Every time you prematurely voiced your dreams, it was as if the atmosphere around you shifted not in celebration, but in subtle resistance. Why? Because when you speak the sacred too soon, you give others the ability to form opinions about things they weren't designed to carry. And some opinions act like gravity. They pull your vision down before it ever takes flight. Ecclesiastes 3:7 tells us there is a time to be silent and a time to speak. This moment you're entering now is one of sacred silence, not because you're afraid, but because you're finally wise enough to know that divine things require divine timing. You're not hiding. You're protecting alignment. Is it possible that the delay wasn't heaven's doing, but the result of sharing too early with people who couldn't hold what you carried? When you're in your winning season, the temptation to finally tell the world can feel overwhelming. You want to scream from the mountaintop that you weren't crazy, that you've been crafting something colossal in the dark while everyone else assumed you disappeared, that while they were scrolling, you were building. But the danger of overexposure is that unfiltered ears introduce unintended resistance. In Mark 5:43, after Jesus raised a girl from the dead, he strictly charged them that no one should know this. Even miracles had to be protected in their infancy. And if he could conceal resurrection, surely you can conceal construction. You may be surrounded by people who love you deeply, but who lack the discernment to support what you're called to do. That's not betrayal. That's a frequency mismatch. And mismatched frequencies scramble vision. When you expose a prophetic blueprint to a carnal interpreter, it doesn't just get misunderstood, it gets mishandled. Psalm 140:1-3 pleads, "Set a guard over my mouth. O Lord, keep watch over the door of my lips." This is the divine strategy you now require, not because you're ashamed of your calling, but because you're no longer sacrificing it for validation. Have you ever seen the cicada? The insect that lives underground for up to 17 years before it emerges to sing. It doesn't surface because it's ready to talk. It surfaces because the environment has aligned with its frequency. You are in your cicada moment. It's not about proving, it's about timing. Your silence isn't void. It's loaded with readiness. And even more importantly, can you discern which of your ideas are revelation and which are still gestation? In the Portuguese Christian film, A Última Ceia, The Last Supper, 2001, there is a line whispered during a dim-lit moment. What is holy must sometimes be hidden, even from those who love God. That one sentence echoed the tension in Jesus' ministry and in yours. Not everything sacred needs a stage. Some things require silence, so the weight of glory can settle before the crowd ever arrives. Matthew 6:6 reminds us, "When you pray, go into your room, close the door, and pray to your Father, who is unseen. Then your Father, who sees what is done in secret, will reward you openly." The same principle applies to what you're building. Close the door. Lock it if necessary. Build in secret so heaven can reveal it in strength. And now, the question shifts. Will you resist the urge to be seen long enough to become undeniable? You're not glowing for applause. You're glowing because heaven is heating the forge. This season demands that you protect what's growing. Silence isn't weakness. It's your weapon. Privacy is not fear. It's strategy. Trust the concealment. Trust the quiet. Trust that when it's time, nothing will be able to stop what heaven has ordained. Rise, quietly, powerfully, precisely. Trying to explain what you're building right now would only dilute it. Worse, it would invite well-meaning interference disguised as wisdom. Are you sure that's smart? Maybe wait just a bit longer. That sounds risky. But these voices, though familiar, are not speaking from revelation. They're speaking from regret. Their advice isn't rooted in alignment. It's rooted in unresolved delay. What you're hearing is not insight. It's the echo of hesitation wearing the mask of love. They don't realize it, but they're projecting the weight of their paused seasons onto your momentum. And if you're not careful, you'll start shrinking to fit their pace. That's why silence is not weakness. It's sovereignty. Proverbs 29:11 tells us, "Fools give full vent to their spirit, but the wise quietly hold it back." In this phase, your silence is not avoidance. It's spiritual engineering. You're not concealing from fear. You're shielding from interference. Every word spoken prematurely becomes architecture that others attempt to edit, even without understanding the blueprint. Have you ever noticed how sacred things never announce themselves loudly? Pregnancy doesn't shout its arrival. It matures quietly until it becomes impossible to hide. In the same way, your process is not for public consumption. It's for divine manifestation. Is it possible that this silence is the insulation your destiny needs before exposure? You don't over updates. You owe yourself completion. The manifestation of what you've carried will be so loud, so undeniable, so disruptive, it won't require defense. It will speak through results, not reports. Matthew 19 declares. But wisdom is proved right by her deeds. What you're building doesn't need to be explained. It needs to be finished. The deeper you move into alignment, the less you blend in. There's a frictionless precision that begins to operate in your spirit, a narrowing of distraction, a focusing of your inner aperture. Like a lens zooming in on the exact coordinates of divine impact. That tension you feel isn't anxiety, it's the calibration of your soul to kingdom frequency. Hebrews 12:1 urges us to throw off everything that hinders and run with perseverance the race marked out for us. You can't run with voices clinging to your ankles. You can't accelerate while trying to appease people who are still walking in circles. There's something powerful that happens in this phase. When your energy sharpens, your discernment heightens, and your light becomes too clear to ignore. Not everyone will celebrate. Some will squint in discomfort. Why? Because your clarity creates contrast. It exposes vagueness. And people hiding in indecision will find your decisiveness threatening. Here's the brutal question no one wants to ask. What if the discomfort you're causing is the cost of becoming fully yourself? In architecture, there's a term called load-bearing silence. It's the intentional absence of structure in a space, not as emptiness, but as purposeful restraint, a void designed to support unseen pressure. Your silence is carrying more than words ever could. It's load-bearing. It's structural. Visionary inventor Lonnie Johnson, best known as the engineer behind the Super Soaker and a NASA scientist, once said, "The hard part is not invention, it's perseverance." His breakthroughs came not when the world was watching, but when no one believed in his quiet experiments. You don't need a crowd. You need commitment. John 12:24 reminds us, unless a kernel of wheat falls to the ground and dies, it remains only a single seed. Your seed, your idea, your dream, your assignment has been buried in silence, not because it's dead, but because it's preparing to erupt. And that eruption won't need a press release. It will be its own announcement. Your silence is a strategy. Your restraint is royalty. And your refusal to explain is not pride, it's prophetic wisdom. You're not dimming your light. You're sharpening it. This is your time to build, refine, and rise with unwavering focus. Speak only when heaven says, now. Until then, let your obedience thunder louder than applause ever could. It's not that you've started treating people differently. You're still kind, still grounded, still the same soul that once celebrated them in their wilderness. But something has shifted, something invisible, yet undeniable. You've become a mirror, and mirrors, unlike opinions, don't lie. They reflect, they expose. They reveal what others might rather keep hidden. Suddenly, interactions feel tense. Conversations that once flowed now pause awkwardly. You hear comments like, "You've changed," or "You're so distant lately," or the classic projection, "You think you're better than us." But the truth runs deeper than their accusations. Your elevation is agitating their stagnation. Your discipline exposes their avoidance. Your peace, once admired, now becomes a disruption to their internal chaos. What if your consistency is the confrontation they've been avoiding? Matthew 5:14 declares, "You are the light of the world. A city on a hill cannot be hidden." But here's the reality of light. It doesn't just illuminate. It also irritates those who have grown comfortable in darkness. You're not being attacked because you're offensive. You're being resisted because you're unignorable. And the wildest part? You won't even be trying. You'll walk into a room, say nothing, and still feel the atmosphere stiffen. Why? Because your frequency speaks louder than your voice ever could. Your clarity disturbs confusion. Your growth stings complacency. Your presence doesn't demand attention, it draws it. And not everyone is ready to meet the version of themselves that your progress reflects back to them. This is where many chosen ones falter. They begin to shrink. They start to apologize for becoming more. But let this be your warning and your freedom. You are not here to make others comfortable. You are not responsible for how your glow makes others feel about their shadows. That tension you're feeling, that's confirmation that you've outgrown the emotional contracts you never signed. Romans 12:2 says, "Do not conform to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind." And the more your mind renews, the more you'll outgrow patterns and people. This is exactly what happened to speaker and activist Valeria Luiselli, a Mexican author known for her fierce truth-telling through literature. She once said, "Telling the truth is never neutral." When she began writing about injustice at the UWI's Mexico border, even colleagues in her own field tried to silence her. But her refusal to dim down is what eventually led her to international recognition, not because she conformed, but because she confronted with clarity. On the flip side, we must also examine the cautionary tale of Elizabeth Holmes, the former founder of Theranos. Once heralded as the next Steve Jobs, she built her empire on illusion and charisma, avoiding hard truths and silencing dissent. But the lie eventually cracked. Her downfall wasn't just about fraud, it was about denying reflection, suppressing accountability, and resisting truth. The consequence: federal prison, global disgrace, and irreversible distrust. A reminder that when you fear reflection, you eventually get shattered by it. Will you dim your brilliance to ease someone else's insecurity, or will you stay lit, even if it makes others squint? John 15:19 offers a sobering reminder. If you belong to the world, it would love you as its own. But you do not belong to the world. That is why the world hates you. Not because you're unkind, but because your clarity disrupts their comfort. You were never meant to fit in. You were meant to stand out without apology. This isn't arrogance. It's an assignment. Don't apologize for becoming what they never expected you to survive. Stay lit. Stay sharp. Stay aligned. If your glow exposes shadows, that's not your burden. That's your assignment. Let them squint. Let heaven shine. The ones who are meant to walk with you, the real ones, will adjust their eyes to your glow. They won't flinch when your light gets brighter. They'll lean in, not out. But others, they'll walk away. Not because you offended them, not because you said too much, but simply because your illumination refused to bend for their illusions. And when that happens, let them go. Not as punishment, but as confirmation. Because if your energy is triggering someone, it means it's doing exactly what heaven designed it to do. You are no longer vibrating in the realm of apology. You're vibrating in truth, and truth has a way of splitting the room in half. John 3:20 says, "Everyone who does evil hates the light, and will not come into the light for fear that their deeds will be exposed." That's not an insult, it's insight. Your very presence now reveals what others have buried, not through accusation, but through alignment. Let's be real for a second. There were seasons when you questioned everything. You looked around and it felt like everyone else was moving, building, advancing, while you were stuck at the crossroads, still trying to figure out which way was even forward. You watched others flourish while you wrestled in silence. It felt like the world was skipping past you, like heaven was withholding momentum. Doors closed before you even knew they existed. Opportunities slid past like clouds in a wind you couldn't catch. Was it because you lacked skill? No. Was it because you lacked purpose? Absolutely not. Could it be that everything was waiting for your frequency to rise to the level of your calling? Isaiah 60:22 offers this divine mystery. When the time is right, I, the Lord, will make it happen. This wasn't about failure, it was about frequency. Destiny doesn't activate when your calendar says it should. It activates when your internal alignment matches heaven's vibration. In hindsight, it's becoming clearer, isn't it? The waiting wasn't punishment, it was a pattern, a sacred synchronization. Think of the bamboo tree after being planted. It sits underground for years, barely growing visibly. And then suddenly, once the root system is deep enough, it shoots up feet in weeks. The delay wasn't denial. It was deep. You weren't being ignored. You were being anchored. Have you ever wondered if the seasons of delay were actually divine insulation? Psalm 27:14 says, "Wait for the Lord, be strong and take heart, and wait for the Lord." You weren't late. You were being prepared to arrive ready. And now the spiritual pressure is shifting. The fog is lifting. And you're beginning to see the pattern, the delays, the detours, the divine rejections. All of it was the choreography of becoming. In the French African Christian play La Nuit de Feu, Night of Fire, a once broken character says in near silence, "God didn't delay me. He preserved me from walking into storms I wasn't built for yet." That's it. The silence wasn't a void. It was a veil of protection. What felt like abandonment was actually a divine buffer zone. And now, the timing has shifted. Now, your soul knows it. What once felt like uncertainty now looks like strategy. What once felt like being left behind now feels like being held back for the perfect launch. What are you willing to believe about yourself now that heaven is confirming what you saw all along? Romans 8:28 says, "And we know that in all things God works for the good of those who love him, who have been called according to his purpose." Not some things, all things. The silence, the setbacks, the seasons that didn't make sense, all of it has been recalibrated into breakthroughs. You are no longer waiting for life to prove you right. You are the proof. What once felt delayed is now revealing its purpose. Don't second guess what God has made clear. The world didn't skip you. Heaven timed you. Rise and walk like someone whose season finally heard their name. You're beginning to see it clearly now that what once looked like agonizing delay was actually divine design. Every supposed setback, every unanswered prayer, every closed door wasn't punishment. It was positional precision. You didn't miss your moment. Your moment was waiting for your readiness. Hebrews 10:36 reminds us, "You need to persevere so that when you have done the will of God, you will receive what he has promised." What you called delays were actually detours, protecting you from destinations you weren't yet fortified to inhabit. Could it be that what you thought was rejection was actually redirection, calibrated by heaven's highest architecture? You didn't lose time. You gained stability. You weren't being startled. You were being structurally reinforced. In construction engineering, there's a principle called dynamic load resistance. A building's ability to absorb pressure over time without collapse. That's what God was doing to you. Strengthening the invisible beams of your identity. Thickening the emotional concrete of your endurance. Refining the frequency of your discernment so that when destiny arrived, you wouldn't buckle under blessing. Salmo 104 once declares. No good thing will he withhold from those who walk uprightly. That means what was withheld was never a denial. There was a delay until the foundation was able to carry it. Every season you labeled as stagnant was actually sacred recalibration. Every door that stayed locked wasn't mocking you. It was sinking to your upgrade. Those people who ghosted you, divine filtering. The jobs that rejected you, frequency mismatch. The relationships that ended, pruning for weightless growth. In cognitive psychology, there's something called future self-continuity, the ability to make present decisions in alignment with your future self. God saw your healed self, your whole self, your wise self, and he rerouted you so that the version of your future you prayed for would not collapse under the unhealed self you were still becoming. That's why Romans 5:3-4 reminds us, suffering produces perseverance, perseverance, character, and character. Hope. You weren't just growing, you were being made durable. And here's the part that will shock you. The time you thought was wasted, it wasn't lost. It was stored in potential, stored in muscle, stored in spiritual compound interest. Your silent obedience was never unseen. It accrued value. The weight didn't weaken you, it matured you. That quickening in your chest, that growing clarity, that sudden momentum, it's not luck, it's return. Galatians 6:9 promise. Let us not grow weary in doing good, for at the proper time we will reap a harvest if we do not give up. And the proper time, it is now. Have you ever wondered if your acceleration is not new, but merely the return of all that was stored? To illustrate this, look at the story of Michaela de Prince, a once orphaned war survivor from Sierra Leone who became a world-renowned ballerina, raised in hardship, rejected for her skin condition. She once said, "They called me the devil's child, but I danced until my name changed." Her rise was not instant. It was built in silence, embrouille, grit, and years of hidden practice. Her triumph, proof that divine delay is often disguised as impossibility. And now, here you are. What you're experiencing is not a random wave. It's the release of a stored breakthrough, spiritual momentum, catching up with your prophetic identity. The things you once dreamed in secret are now chasing you in public. What was whispered in prayer is now roaring in manifestation. You didn't miss it. You mastered it. And now you're rising on borrowed time, returned with glory. The silence was never the absence of God. It was the architecture of alignment. Now walk boldly into the acceleration. What was stored is now surging. What was held is now here. Rise like someone who's been cleared by heaven's blueprint, and the very ones who once whispered that you were stuck, who counted you out because you were quiet, still, unseen, they're about to be stunned. Not because you've changed your strategy, but because the spotlight is finally catching up to your obedience. You weren't behind. You were being realigned. Not according to man's metrics, but by heaven's. Isaiah 60:1 tells you plainly, arise, shine, for your light has come, and the glory of the Lord rises upon you. Your light didn't disappear. It was being prepared to pierce through atmospheres. What if your stillness wasn't stagnation but sacred strategy? For too long, you've sat quietly clapping for everyone else's moment. You've been the one who holds the room together, the one who listens without needing the mic, the one who cheers without being asked. You've stood in shadows, not out of weakness, but out of strength refined through humility. And you've done it with love, because that's who you are. You were never bitter, you were never entitled, but deep in your spirit, you've always known this wasn't your final posture. There was a whisper in your chest that said, I wasn't sent here just to applaud others. I was sent here to awaken something the world forgot it needed. Unto. And now, that whisper has become a roar. Not an arrogant one, a holy one. A rumble in the heavens that announces, your time is not coming. Your time is here. 1 through Galatians 6, 9 promises. Let us not grow weary in doing good, for in due season we shall reap, if we faint not. This is that due season. You didn't manipulate your way here. You didn't beg for it. You let your consistency speak. And now, your energy is no longer ignorable. What if the reason they can't explain your presence is because they weren't spiritually authorized to understand it? People will begin to notice you, not for show, but for substance. They'll study you. Not because you're loud, but because your life has become an answer. You've become an embodiment of perseverance. And there's no blueprint for that. It's not something that can be faked. It's frequency. It's a favor. It's fruit. Matthew 5:16 says, "Let your light shine before others, that they may see your good works and glorify your Father in heaven." What's coming is not self-promotion. It's divine recognition. Let's be clear. This isn't about revenge, but there will be divine reversal. To illustrate that, Lori Loughlin, once adored for her wholesome on-screen roles, in real life, she attempted to fast-track her daughter's college admission through fraud. She skipped the process, bought influence, but the truth caught up. Her reputation crumbled. Legal consequences followed, and public trust shattered. It wasn't the silence that failed her. It was the shortcut. Meanwhile, you took the long road, the honest road, the hidden road, and now God is showing the difference. Have you ever wondered why your name was being prepared in rooms you didn't even know existed? Luke 14:10 tells us, "Friend, move up to a better place. Then you will be honored in the presence of all the other guests." That's what's happening now. You're being called up not because you asked, but because heaven announced you. Inspirational filmmaker Mati Diop, the first black woman to compete for the Palme d'Or at Cannes, once said, "I didn't fight to be seen. I just kept showing up with the truth." That's exactly what you've done. And now the world is responding not to noise, but to weight. This is not your rehearsal. This is your release. You are not a placeholder in someone else's story. You are the revelation they didn't see coming. So when the lights turn, don't blink, don't shrink, don't apologize. Rise like the prophecy you are. They'll mimic, they'll mirror, they'll attempt to study your movements like choreography, not to mock, but because your light has become instructional. And at first, that attention may feel disorienting. You're not used to this. You're familiar with blending into backdrops, holding space for others, cheering from the sidelines while someone else holds the mic. You're used to invisibility that felt spiritual, safe. But heaven didn't anoint you to hide. You were never created to play background in a script God wrote with your name at the center. That ache you used to feel, that divine restlessness, that was never ego, that was your mantle making noise. Isaiah 61:3 speaks of those who rise from ashes to become oaks of righteousness, a planting of the Lord for the display of his splendor. That's you. Not accidental, not apologetics. Planted, public, and purposed. Have you ever wondered why certain rooms go quiet when you enter, even when you say nothing? Because energy doesn't whisper. It announces, and yours is no longer subtle. You don't need to fight for recognition. Your presence disrupts the atmosphere without needing validation. You are the living plot twist someone else prayed for. You're becoming a permission slip, a prophetic signal. When they watch you own your light without shame, it tells them, you can own yours too. This is not self-centeredness. This is a spiritual demonstration. Matthew 5:14-16 reminds us, you are the light of the world. Let your light shine before others, that they may see your good deeds and glorify your Father in heaven. You're not stealing a spotlight. You are the spotlight, because what's radiating from you isn't ego. It's evidence. Your path, your pain, your patience, your obedience, all of it has merged into something unforgettable. This is not mere growth. This is a spiritual mutation. You didn't just evolve, you rewired. If your younger self walked into the room today, they wouldn't recognize you. Not just because you've changed how you walk or talk, but because your spiritual frequency is untraceable to who you once were. What happened to you didn't come from a seminar, a title, or a graduation. It came from the fire. Psalm 66:10-12 confirms this process. For you, God, tested us. You refined us like silver. We went through fire and water, but you brought us to a place of abundance. This wasn't surface refinement. This was soul transformation. You don't just walk differently now. You carry different weights. People will try to decode it. They won't be able to. In the wild, there's a phenomenon that reflects this. Take the sea slug Elysia chlorotica, a creature that steals chloroplasts from algae and permanently integrates photosynthesis into its own biology. It doesn't imitate light, it becomes it. That's what happened to you. You didn't just reflect greatness, you absorbed it and transformed. And now, just like that strange organism, you can't be placed in old categories anymore. You don't fit the old genus, the old expectation, the old role. You are a new species of spirit walker, unboxable, untrackable, undeniable. In the Romanian Christian drama Fântâna Adâncă, The Deep Well, a character proclaims in broken breath, "He didn't save me to echo someone else. He saved me to sound like heaven." That's what you're doing now. You're not echoing the room. You're retuning it. So let them study. Let them mimic. Let them misunderstand. You've been in the audience long enough. Now it's your turn to take the stage. This isn't performance. This is a prophetic embodiment. Don't downplay what God handcrafted. Don't apologize for becoming unrecognizable to your former self. You didn't just grow up, you mutated. And now, the world won't just watch it. We'll remember. Take the mic. Take the mantle. Take the stage. This is not just a growth spurt. It's not a fresh start. It's a total reconfiguration of your spiritual architecture. You didn't just make adjustments. You rewrote your blueprint. You don't just act differently, you are different. What used to rule you no longer even registers in your nervous system. What used to magnetize you now leaves you uninterested. That's not apathy. That's elevation. Romans 12:2 tells us, "Be transformed by the renewing of your mind." The transformation was never about appearances. It was always about essence. Have you noticed how the things you once prayed desperately for now barely move you? How the people who once triggered spirals in you now leave you in total calm? This isn't numbness. This is neurological sanctification. A rewiring of your soul from trauma-driven decisions to truth-based discernment. Every wound you survived, every disappointment you swallowed in silence, every time you doubted whether you would ever get it right, it all became part of a divine scaffolding. Heaven used to rebuild you from the inside out. You don't move the same. You don't think the same. You don't even desire the same anymore. That is not ego. That is spiritual maturity. Isaiah 43. 18:19 says, "Forget the former things, do not dwell on the past. See, I am doing a new thing." That's not a poetic idea. That's a prophetic neural reality. In neuropsychology, there's a principle called synaptic pruning, where the brain deletes old, unused neural pathways to make room for stronger, more efficient ones. That's what's happened in your spirit. The version of you that used to over-explain, over people please, over-function just to stay chosen, that version has been deleted. The signal's been cut. People trying to interact with that old version, all they get now is static, and that static is holy. Have you ever wondered why your old crowd can no longer access you emotionally? Even when you're in the same room, it's not distance, it's dimensional shift. You outgrew a mold. You were never meant to fit in. That shell wasn't you. It was survival. But now, you're not surviving, you're embodying. Yes, growth brings grief. Not grief for who you are now, but sacred reverence for who you had to let go of. That younger version of you, the one who second-guessed, who whispered instead of roared, who dimmed to keep others warm. They got you here, and now you get to do what they could only imagine, live, unshrunk. Hebrews 12:1 exhorts us to throw off everything that hinders and run with perseverance the race marked out for us. You can't run with dead weight, and you can't fly while clinging to expired roles. This echoes the journey of Zanele Muholi, a South African visual activist and photographer who once said, "I needed to create images where I could find myself." Known for challenging the portrayal of black LGBTQ+ identity, Muholi didn't just shift the narrative, they mutated it. Their art isn't decoration, it's a declaration. And so is your life now. You are no longer explaining your transformation. You are living it out loud. Ephesians 4:22-24 tells us, "Put off your old self. Be made new in the attitude of your minds. Put on the new self, created to be like God." You've done just that, not just spiritually, but neurologically, emotionally, prophetically. You didn't just evolve. You outlived the version of you they thought would never rise. You didn't betray your past self, you fulfilled them. You are not just walking forward, you are walking in holy reprogramming. And now, the blueprint isn't what they gave you, it's what heaven authored. Don't apologize for the signal shift. Walking like the mutation was the plan all along, but they can't come with you. Not because you stopped loving them, but because you stopped shrinking. This isn't about arrogance or cutting people off. This is about evolution without apology. This is the season where you don't just talk about transformation, you embody it. You were never meant to stay recognizable to people who only knew you in survival mode. That version of you was sacred, but it was also temporary. You're not losing people. You're outgrowing proximity that once matched your pain. Isaiah 43:18 reminds us, "Forget the former things, do not dwell on the past." Why? Because God doesn't call you to nostalgia. He calls you next. Have you felt it yet? That subtle discomfort that rises when you enter old spaces with a new identity, when conversations fall flat, when the atmosphere feels too small for what God has done inside you. That's not rejection. That's confirmation. The goal was never to remain familiar. The goal was to become so aligned, so healed, so radiant that even your silence commands attention. You were destined to evolve into someone your younger self couldn't even imagine. That's not betrayal. That's prophetic proof. Psalm 138:8 declares, "The Lord will fulfill his purpose for me." And that's what's happening now. not in theory, not in vague hope, but in real time. Every scar, every delay, every silent night. It all became construction material for you that now walks fully awake. This is why some will no longer recognize you, and why some will resent you. As you elevate, don't forget that your growth will confront people who haven't faced themselves, and that confrontation will create resistance. But that resistance, it's not punishment, it's a pattern. Before elevation, there is always exposure. Take Hilaria Baldwin, for instance. Once admired for her presence in wellness and social media, her carefully curated identity came under fire when it was revealed she fabricated Spanish roots. She wasn't rejected because of change, she was exposed because of false construction. The result? Public backlash, lost credibility, and lasting suspicion. A sobering example that you can't fake authenticity forever. You, on the other hand, did the work. The real, hidden, painful work. And now you've stepped into the fulfillment quietly, honestly, powerfully. Romans 8:29 reminds us that we are predestined to be conformed to the image of His Son. That conformity isn't cosmetic, it's internal. And that internal transformation doesn't require external validation anymore. Have you asked yourself why the spotlight is finding you now, even when you're not asking for it? Because your identity no longer leaks uncertainty. You've become the answer you once waited for. You're no longer walking as the one who questioned everything. You're walking as the one who knows. Beloved speaker and advocate Muniba Mazari, known as Pakistan's Iron Lady, once said after surviving a life-changing car accident, "You are the hero of your own story." And heroes don't give up. Her wheelchair didn't define her, her persistence did. Like you, she didn't just survive the blow, she rewrote the ending. So yes, it might feel lonely at the top of this mountain, but that's only because validation doesn't live here. Legacy does. You've become the person you once prayed would walk in and save you. You are the answer. You are the evidence. You are the fulfillment. Don't mourn who didn't make the journey. Honor the climb. Protect the view. And rise, not with noise, but with undeniable presence. This is not just a coincidence. This is not just warfare. This is a spiritual pattern, and it's predictable. It happens to every chosen one right before they step into a new dimension. Not because they did something wrong, but because heaven is clearing the space around them. Just when you start catching your rhythm, something tries to throw you off balance. A betrayal from someone close. A sudden financial shift. A memory you thought was healed, flaring up out of nowhere. The enemy doesn't need new tactics when old wounds still trigger you. But what you're facing isn't regression, it's the threshold. Isaiah 41:10 says, "Do not fear, for I am with you. Do not be dismayed, for I am your God." That fear rising in you right now isn't a warning. It's a test, not to prove your weakness, but to confirm your growth. Have you noticed how pressure intensifies right before clarity hits? Why do some of your deepest doubts tend to surface right when you're closest to a breakthrough? That's not failure, that's friction. And friction always precedes spiritual lift. You might feel like everything is unraveling, but what's really happening is divine filtration. The universe, orchestrated by the Most High, is pushing everything to the surface that can't come with you. Think of it as a spiritual shedding. The old skins, identities, beliefs, ties, even comforts begin to peel away, not as punishment, but as preparation. Hebrews 12:27 explains it like this: "The removal of what can be shaken, that is, created things, so that what cannot be shaken may remain. This isn't a loss, it's a fortification. What's falling away was already unstable. The shaking just made it visible. Here's where it gets deeper. The pain doesn't mean you're failing. It means you're finally strong enough to see what's been silently sabotaging your next level. And that confrontation, that betrayal, that temptation to spiral, it's not random. It's a spiritual checkpoint. This is your Red Sea moment. When Pharaoh chases, not because you're wrong, but because you're right at the edge of deliverance. Psalm 34:19 says, "Many are the afflictions of the righteous, but the Lord delivers him out of them all." The affliction is not a sign of rejection, it's a sign of arrival. Ever noticed how certain animals molt before transformation? The blue morpho butterfly must violently thrash to escape its cocoon. It's not struggling, it's strengthening. Without that final friction, the wings won't hold, and if helped prematurely, it dies in flight. That's what this feels like. Not death, but emergence. You're not under attack, you're under refinement. And this pattern isn't new. In the 1994 Italian Christian musical La Luce sulla strada, The Light on the Road, there's a climactic moment when the protagonist, rejected and exhausted, is told in a whisper by a stranger, "It is darkest before the kingdom dawns." That whisper becomes the anchor that carries him through the final test. And now, you're hearing the same whisper. So the question isn't, will it end? The question is, what is this pain revealing that must not walk into your future? Romans 5:3-4 gives us clarity. We rejoice in our sufferings, knowing that suffering produces endurance, and endurance produces character, and character produces hope. You are not breaking. You are being crowned through confrontation. Let the test come. Let the fear be triggered. Let the betrayal be revealed, because all of it is proof that you're closer than you've ever been. You're not regressing, you're graduating. Don't retreat. Don't explain. Don't beg for what's falling away. Cross the threshold. The next level is not waiting for you. It's summoning you. You respond differently now. You don't flinch like you used to. You don't spiral the moment tension arises. Where pain used to trigger panic, now you pause with power. Where you once shrank to avoid conflict, now you expand calmly. Unapologetically, you no longer chase peace from people. You are peace in the midst of pressure. And just like that, the confrontation that used to undo you, it now confirms your calibration. Isaiah 26:3 declares, "You will keep in perfect peace those whose minds are steadfast, because they trust in you." That's not poetic comfort, it's strategic warfare. Peace isn't passivity, it's power held still. Have you noticed how chaos tends to show up when you've finally reached internal clarity? Suddenly, the energy shifts. The tension in the room thickens. Random triggers rise. The enemy targets you like it's personal, but it's not. It's predictable. That's the cue. That's the signal. It's a frequency response to your growth. And the only thing left to do now is not flinch. Don't personalize the chaos. Don't internalize the drama. This isn't about them anymore. It's about you holding your ground in the face of temptations that used to distract you. Psalm 112:7 says, "They will have no fear of bad news. Their hearts are steadfast, trusting in the Lord." This is the threshold moment that never gets advertised. Because graduation doesn't begin with applause. It begins with resistance. Not because you're weak, but because you've become undeniable. The forces that once fed off your confusion, the roles, the projections, the expectations, they can't survive your clarity. They don't know what to do when you stop reacting, when you stop defending, when you stop trying to fix what was never your responsibility to carry. You're no longer a side character in stories that demand your silence. You've stepped into your own narrative, and when that happens, the scripts others wrote for you disintegrate. Galatians 5 reminds us. It is for freedom that Christ has set us free. Stand firm, then, and do not let yourselves be burdened again by a yoke of slavery. That yoke may have looked like people pleasing, or codependency, or over-explaining. But now, you've dropped it, and you can feel it. Not in the ease, but in the resistance. Wonder why the final boss always shows up right before the game ends? It's not a trap. It's a test of embodiment. The enemy isn't coming harder because you're weaker. He's coming because you're winning. In theoretical physics, there's a phenomenon called symmetry breaking. When a system shifts into a new state, it becomes momentarily unstable as it finds new equilibrium. That's what's happening to you. You're not falling apart. You're transitioning into uncharted stability. The shakiness is not regression. It's realignment. And here's what's wild. You're holding the line without even trying. That's how deep the transformation has gone. You're walking proof that what used to haunt you now passes right through you, like wind through armor. This reminds me of a quote from artist and survivor Laolu Senbanjo, a Nigerian visual storyteller and human rights lawyer, who said, "The body is a temple. My scars are the stained glass that let the light through." You're not hiding your scars anymore. You've made them sacred. 2 Corinthians 12:10 confirms this. For when I am weak, then I am strong. And that strength, it no longer screams, it stands. So when the enemy shows up with the same chaos dressed in a new costume, smile. You're not being tested because you're uncertain. You're being targeted because you've already crossed over. Don't explain. Don't run. Hold your ground like someone who knows the final boss only shows up when you've already won the level. You're being tested because you're next. Not next in theory, next in timing. The platform is already in place. The lights have already shifted. The atmosphere is pregnant with fulfillment. All that's missing now is your entrance. But here's the part that few understand. You weren't supposed to become this. Not by society's rules. Not by family patterns. Not by cultural code. You weren't born into prophecy. You had to battle for it. Psalm 118:22 says, "The stone the builders rejected has become the cornerstone." That's you? Misunderstood, misused, misnamed, but positioned. Let's be honest, the soil you were planted in was never designed to produce someone like you. The family dynamics, the cultural programming, the city mindset, the generational curses masquerading as tradition, all of it was engineered to repeat cycles, not release pioneers. But you were the glitch in the system, the one who asked questions the elders wouldn't touch, the one who exposed cracks they painted over, the one who said, "This doesn't feel like freedom," even when everyone else called it obedience. Have you ever wondered why your mere presence unsettles people who claim to love you? It's not arrogance, it's awakening. And people addicted to denial will always label discernment as rebellion. They called you difficult, dramatic, disruptive, too much, too intense, too sensitive, but they missed it. You weren't defiant, you were delivered. Romans 2:2 reminds us, "Do not conform to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind." You didn't refuse to follow the pattern out of spite. You couldn't follow it because your spirit was never coded for captivity. Let's be clear, your elevation was not anticipated by the structures that surrounded you. It wasn't forecasted. It wasn't accounted for. It's supernatural, a divine interruption in a storyline that was set to repeat until someone broke it. To affirm this, the words of José Mujica, the former president of Uruguay, known for his radical simplicity and moral clarity. He once said, "If we lived by truly human values, not the markets, we would already be in paradise." Mujica led from the margins, turning down a palace to live in a humble farmhouse. He was called eccentric, even dangerous. But history remembered him as the moral reset of a broken system. And on the other side of that spectrum, look at Joe Low, the Malaysian businessman behind the 1MDB scandal. Once celebrated for his wealth and celebrity circles, he secretly siphoned billions meant for national development. While he lived large, his deception was eventually exposed, leading to international disgrace, criminal charges, and a global manhunt. He followed the pattern of unchecked power and was dismantled by the same system he manipulated. Which legacy are you building? One that mirrors the blueprint, or one that breaks it? Isaiah 61:4 speaks of the chosen ones as those who will rebuild the ancient ruins and restore the places long devastated. That's your mandate, not to fit in, but to rebuild from within. You weren't born to clap for cycles. You were born to terminate them. You were different, but not by mistake. You were engineered by eternity to be an interruption, born into a whirlwind of contradiction. You weren't dropped into chaos to be crushed by it. You were forged through it. You learned to hear the frequency of God in the static of dysfunction. You were never meant to echo the noise. You were destined to discern the signal. What if the pain you thought disqualified you was actually the curriculum of your calling? You were placed in systems that couldn't see you, not to break you, but to teach you how to see without mirrors. You were surrounded by voices that never affirmed you, so you could become the kind of warrior who doesn't wait for applause to move forward. Isaiah 30:21 says, your ears will hear a word behind you, saying, "This is the way, walk in it." You learned to move, not because it was easy, but because stillness in the wrong place became spiritual suffocation. And now you understand, silence from people is often a signal that heaven is speaking. Where others were handed maps, you were handed moments, and in those moments quiet, lonely, uncertain, you didn't fold. You built your own compass out of memory, mystery, and mustard seed faith. You learned to spot divine patterns in cracked sidewalks and coded dreams. You realized that a locked door wasn't the end. It was just proof that what's inside was never meant to be casually accessed. Like a glacier that forms over decades in stillness, unseen beneath the surface. Your power was never loud. It was layered, like the alpine saxifrage flower that blooms only after surviving brutal frost. Your strength came not from sunshine, but from survival. And now you bloom, not in spite of your environment, but because of how it tried to bury you. Romans 8:37 affirms it boldly. In all these things we are more than conquerors through him who loved us. You didn't just conquer the storm, you became fluent in its language. But now comes the twist. The same people who ignored your whispers are watching your rise with curiosity, not because you've changed, but because you didn't. You stayed aligned when it would have been easier to adapt. And now your presence is starting to question everything their comfort never dared to confront. Have you noticed how some people stare like they're seeing you for the first time? That's not new energy. That's just your old light, finally unfiltered. And here's what makes it prophetic. You weren't raised with a map. You were raised with a memory of heaven. Something inside you always knew the way, even when nothing around you could confirm it. Proverbs 4:18 says, "The path of the righteous is like the morning sun, shining ever brighter till the full light of day." You didn't just walk this path, you cleared it. For others, for generations, for the unseen ones still waiting for a sign that survival is holy. In the 1983 French Christian drama L'Annonce à Marie by Paul Claudel, a character whispers, "Le silence est plein de Dieu." Translation, silence is full of God. And so was yours. Your quiet years weren't empty, they were sacred construction zones. And now what's emerging isn't just a new version of you, it's the original, uncorrupted, divine architecture finally coming into view. So here's the question. What if your wilderness wasn't a detour, but a blueprint? What if your loneliness was really leadership being born in secret? Isaiah 43:19 reminds us, "Behold, I am doing a new thing, now it springs forth. Do you not perceive it? And now." The miracle is not just in what you're stepping into, it's in the fact that you arrived here without a single person paving the way for you. You didn't just break the mold, you exposed the mold for the lie it was. You weren't born to mimic systems, you came to rewrite them. And now, those who never believed in you are being forced to sit in the audience as heaven unveils the truth you carried in silence. You are the sign, you are the shift, you are the living prophecy. Now rise not for attention, but for assignment. Your stage is sacred. Your entrance is already written. Walk boldly. While others were busy trying to diagnose your difference, you were quietly disrupting ancient blueprints that were never yours to follow. You weren't rebelling, you were rerouting timelines. Generational contracts written in silence and passed down through trauma were broken the moment you chose not to repeat them. And though no trumpets blared, no crowds cheered, heaven recorded the rupture. You didn't just walk away from the pain, you dismantled the system it lived in. Psychologists call this pattern interruption. Physicists call it phase shifting, a moment when energy hits critical mass and changes state entirely. Spiritually, it's called deliverance. And you didn't just witness it, you became it. Have you ever wondered why your very existence unsettles people who've never taken time to understand you? It's because your vibration interferes with the script. They were handed a script you were never meant to act in. Jeremiah 1:10 speaks directly to your assignment. See, today I appoint you over nations and kingdoms to uproot and tear down, to destroy and overthrow, to build and to plant. You were sent not to renovate the broken, but to rebuild from the foundation up, like a seismic rupture under the crust of family dysfunction. Your presence became a quiet earthquake, steady, unseen at first, but destined to shift everything above it, while others clung to inherited ceilings. You reimagined architecture. The internal blueprint you carried wasn't printed on paper, it was encrypted in your spirit. That's why you could never settle for what others called normal. It never felt like home because it wasn't built for your frequency. Ephesians 2:10 reminds you, "For we are God's masterpiece, created in Christ Jesus to do good works, which God prepared in advance for us to do." You weren't just fighting for survival. You were resurrecting purpose from forgotten DNA. And now, clarity is dawning like morning light through stained glass, each shard a fragment of a past that couldn't hold you. Artist and creative entrepreneur Ez Devlin, known for designing monumental stage architecture for artists and museums around the world, once said, "I don't create to impress. I create to transform the way we see space." That's exactly what you've done. You weren't trying to impress anyone. You were shifting the psychological and spiritual interior design of your lineage. What if your confusion wasn't dysfunction, but divine recalibration? What if the shame you once wore was actually the shadow cast by your growing wingspan, Romans 12:2 says it best. Do not conform to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. You were never meant to inherit the narrative. You were sent to disrupt it. And that disruption wasn't a side effect, it was the assignment. This is not the season you hide what makes you different. This is the era, you name it. Own it. And walk in it with holy defiance. You're not the black sheep, you're the bloodline reformer. You're not the outcast, you're the chosen catalyst. Salm 118, 22 declares. The stone the builders rejected has become the cornerstone. That's you. The one once dismissed has become the foundation others will stand on without realizing the cost of what you broke through. So when you feel the ground trembling beneath your next step, don't retreat. Step forward. This isn't destruction. It's divine demolition, and you're standing in the middle of a spiritual construction site where heaven is finally releasing what has been stored in your blueprint all along. You weren't just built differently, you were calibrated for kingdom reform. Your path was never meant to mimic theirs, because your code was written in heaven's dialect. This season isn't about what's entering your life. It's about what's finally being unlocked from within you. Identity, clarity, conviction, and the unapologetic release of your God-given fire. And so now, the beloved chosen one, breathe it in. The truth has been spoken. Not only have you survived the story, you rewrote the structure. You didn't just disrupt the timeline, you delivered a new one. This entire journey wasn't about being understood, it was about being obedient. You were never meant to blend in, you were sent to build what had never existed before. And now, the world is watching what heaven already knew. This is the moment where clarity replaces confusion, identity replaces insecurity, and your spiritual blueprint finally unfolds in full color. You are not behind. You are not lost. You are not broken. You are becoming what you were born to release. If this message ignited something deep within you, let it be known. Tap that like button to help this truth reach others. Drop a comment below, even just a 777, to mark this as your moment of agreement. Share this word with someone who needs a holy reminder of their mission. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications, because we are not just building a channel, we're cultivating a movement of the awakened. To those who have given through super thanks, thank you from the depths of my spirit. And to those who simply received this word in silence, your presence is just as sacred. May divine clarity fill your steps. May boldness be your frequency. May heaven go before you, behind you, and within you. And may your life be the evidence that the mold was never necessary, because you were always the masterpiece. You didn't just end the cycle. You opened the future. Go walk in it. Go build it. Go be it.